Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Nordic Countries Project's interview series ahead of the German federal elections in September 2021. My name is Richard Forsén and I work as project coordinator and research associate at KAS here in Stockholm. KAS is a German political foundation with projects in more than 120 countries. KAS established a new office here in Stockholm back in autumn 2019, whose events and research projects cover the whole Nordic region. Part of this series of interviews, we've decided to ask Nordic experts with long-term experience with Germany and German politics to tell us more about the expectations ahead of the German federal elections. Joining us today on a Zoom link from Norway, Oslo, I believe, is Ingrid Brekke, foreign policy reporter at the Norwegian daily Aftenposten and co-host of the podcast Tyskerne, the Germans, whose focus is partially on German politics and culture for Norwegian audience. The podcast will be linked in the description to this video. Hello, Ingrid.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much for wanting to talk to me.
How did you come to have such an interest in Germany and things German?
Well, my mother, she was a teacher of German language, so I sort of grew up with a link to Germany, but I was never very interested until 2004. And then I had already worked as a journalist for many years, mainly as a literary critic and in the culture section. But then I discovered the German journalist program IJP, the International Journalist Program, and I took part in an exchange. So I stayed in Berlin in the newspaper Die Welt for 3 months, and it sort of opened up a new world to me. I fell in love with Berlin. I became interested in history, and after I came home, I switched from the culture department to foreign news. And in the year 2000, I became a correspondent for my newspaper in Berlin. And since then, I followed German and, of course, also European, it's all linked, politics very closely.
Interesting. What was your experience coming from a Norwegian daily to Die Welt back in the early 2000s? Was it like how was the experience for you?
Well, it was. I now realize I said something wrong because I of course, I became a correspondent for my newspaper in 2010, 6 years after I was in Die Welt in 2004. Just so the chronology doesn't sound completely crazy. Yes, well, the main thing that amazed me was that I was not able to use my computer in the newspaper because they had these very strict firewalls, and also they did not have a computer that I could borrow. So I was I was sort of helpless, but this was technical things. It had nothing to do with the friendliness of the people working there. They were very welcoming, but and also I had sort of a culture clash, realizing what is a German editorial meeting like, because in Norway they are very disciplined. But in Germany, it was like everyone standing together around the boss, and they needed to talk louder than the other one in order to be heard. And to me, it seemed completely chaotic. And this was maybe the first part of me killing all my cliches about Germany. Nothing is like these basic cliches that you sort of grow up with. So.
Sounds like something out of a very rabid East Coast US newspaper instead of something in a Nordic stereotype of a German Berlin newspaper office.
Maybe.
Big cigar in the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me something. Anyhow, I couldn't coming back to your podcast, Tyskerne. I was fascinated by the motto, I guess you could say, en podcast om politik, kultur och allt det andra, a podcast about politics, culture, and all the rest. what is all the rest for you?
Well, every episode we have a column about language. We laugh about crazy German words, and because I'm making this together with a German who's lived 10 years in Norway, but and we do it in Norwegian, but he, of course, his first language is always German, so he also have some Norwegian words he don't understand or find ridiculous. So we sort of so this is part of everything else. It's these word things, and then it's just to give ourselves room so we can talk about everything we want to talk about and still be in the concept, so to say.
Wow. Yeah, and you are already at episode 87. So so how has your response been for you guys?
Well, this is my what you say, my little baby. This is a project I do on my free time. It has nothing to do with Aftenposten. It's a hobby project, and it's something I just love to do. And because of that, we started with nothing. We just published on Facebook, and then we started another Facebook page, and it has grown. We have done this for 3 years now, and it has grown steadily. And we have also made some live shows, which we love to do that. That's our favorite, to do the live shows. We also visited Germany and did it in the Frankfurt Buchmesse. Of course, in German, about Norway, and that was, yeah. So it has grown, and also we have got some financial support now, so this helps. So it's just something I want to continue doing, and hopefully it will continue to get more and more listeners, and we hope to really profit of the fact that it's an election year, and that people are now looking to, well, what is actually happening in Germany after Angela Merkel, and then they will maybe find us and start to listen. This is our hope.
Where can our listeners or our viewers, if you speak Norwegian, most probably find the podcast?
You can find it in all we are on iTunes and Spotify, and in all the podcast players. So you can find it where you normally find your podcasts. Just search for Tyskerne.
Wonderful. Yeah, as a Swede, I'm going to recommend Spotify to everybody in that case.
Excellent. Thank you.
Completely objectively.
Of course.
But, then you already mentioned now the election in September, which is I think fascinating, because Norway is also having elections, parliamentary elections at the same time. But I think that we will return to that subject a bit later in the discussion. But like, would you say that Germany and the wider role of Europe and the European Union is discussed enough in Norway?
I would say no, it's not. It's a complicated subject to us. As maybe a lot of you already know, we voted twice not to be a member of the EU. And the consequence of this is, in my opinion, that it seems to have led to a certain disinterest in continental Europe. It's like we cannot talk about Germany or EU or Europe without this sort of membership thing tagging along, and this is very, it makes it very hard to I can see it in my when I have presentations or meet people and talk about Germany and Europe. The interest is much bigger from people who are also active in trying to get us to be member of the EU. But in my point of view, of course, Germany and Europe is equally important to all of us, whether we think it's right to be in EU or not. It's like, it's there, and it is our closest friend, Germany. And it's a very strange thing to realize how little people know and how little interest there is. I think part of it is also that we are very Anglo-Saxon. We have been very American and Great Britain. We have been looking in that direction. So because of Trump and the realization that the United States are no longer the reliable partner it used to be, and because UK has now sort of put itself on the political sideline, this might change. I think the realization are growing that we should be very happy that Germany are very interested. They are very interested in Norway. And of course, our politicians are very aware of this, and business people. It's not like we don't. I mean, the people who are political active or are doing trade, of course, they know all this. I'm sort of talking about the general public, and I think it might change now because we realize how lucky we are to have this opportunity to be closer knit maybe to Europe in the future.
Because facing now looking ahead at the Norwegian elections, the Senterpartiet has had quite a historic upswing in the polls with Trygve, the party leader. I never remember his last name. I only know him as Trygve, being quite a popular politician. At the same time, with Senterpartiet becoming, to my understanding at least, more explicitly EU and like European integration skeptic in a way, which is very visible. What's your reaction to this? Is this Senterpartiet catching a previous maybe like Fremskrittsparti and previous, I mean, antagonism and skepticism against Europe, or is it something new?
It's hard to say. It's not really my field of expertise. But what I think is that this is a lot of the way Trygve Slagsvold Vedum, as is his name, and Senterpartiet and also other forces now in Norway are talking against the EU. It's more like slogans and shouting out loud. But if the government or the politicians in power, I think it's not possible to change very much the relationship we already have, because it's so interwoven economically and politically. So I can't really see it, our relationship in real terms actually change. But of course, these are it's still like a signal of danger, because these things tend to live a life of their own, and if you just continue saying these things, and maybe the other side are not very clever in the way they are arguing against it, because they think a bit like me, it's not really dangerous, and then suddenly you have real political change and they will have to do something. So it's a political trend that we should be aware of, I could say.
Yeah, I won't burn you with more Norwegian domestic political questions in that case. I think that Jonas Gahr Støre will potentially have enough issues on that front coming depending on how it goes now in the election, of course. But what, in your view, is Germany's role in Europe, and what should Germany's role be, in your opinion?
Well, objectively, it's obviously the most powerful country in Europe and with the biggest economy. And this in combination with the fact that Germany are very active diplomatically, that they are having close bilateral relations with every single country and every single government, and nurturing these bilateral relationship in addition to being sort of the power hub of Europe. I think all of this together makes Germany a stabilizing force, stability force in Europe. And this is of course a very important function that Europe really needs. Personally, I would have liked to see Germany more active in sort of East-West relations. I mean, they are the bridge between these two sides of Europe. They have this they have their history, and also geographically they are in between. And I have been working a lot with Poland, also written a book about Poland, and the authoritarian powerhouse that Poland has become, because Hungary is of course way further down the road, but it's a small country. But Poland, that is completely different ballpark. And Germany, they have just left all of these questions to the EU. They don't want to create problems in the neighborhood. And of course, it might be wise because of history. Who are the Germans to come and teach Poland anything after what they did in the war? But it's still a passivity that I find unnecessary. I really wish that Germany, because it's not like it's the basic principles of Europe. It's the most important part of what the EU should be. It should be defending democracy, and it's failing in some countries, and other countries might follow. Even Austria seem to be, things are happening now that you can hardly believe. And Germany should be more concerned about this. So that would be my answer to what Germany's role should be. And then maybe I should also add that there are, of course, things going on underneath the surface here. It's not like Germany don't do anything, but it doesn't seem like that. And sometimes it's also very important to just be very loud and very clear, I think. And this is now.
I think that's interesting, because I remember a recent, I think the most recent Eurobarometer survey pointed out that at least in Sweden, I think, potentially also Denmark, but at least in Sweden, the number one trait associated with the EU, even amongst those who were EU skeptic, was the value aspect of rule of law, etc. So would you say that is something which is, that this point is something which resonates? If it because Norwegian voters were not in the EU barometer, but would you say that is something that also explicitly resonates, particularly with Norwegians?
Yes, I would say so, because I've been discussing a lot about Poland and writing about it also in my newspaper. I get a lot of shocked reactions, and of course maybe I get the most reactions on the women's issues, because that is sort of the heartland of Norway, that we are very far ahead of many other countries when it comes to equality and women's rights. And the way Poland are now sort of reversing progress, actually, it's very shocking. And we have a very close relationship to Poland, because a lot of Polish people are working here. It's sort of in the neighborhood. So I think this is very, it's shocking, and it's something people really care about, that that Poland and of course all European countries should be democratic and keep on having these values. And again, especially now, probably after United States, nothing seems as obvious as before, and Europe is of course now the or should be, or is actually, I would say, is the real defender now of the Western democracy. Yeah.
But now moving on to September's election in Germany, current polling paints the German Green Party as potentially the new largest party of Germany, and therefore a potential victor in the September federal elections. And some discussions are now ongoing about different possible governmental coalitions on the German federal level, including a potential green-black coalition between the Greens and the Christian Democrats, the CDU, CSU. Being the author of the first Norwegian language biography of Angela Merkel, what would you expect there to be for, what effect would a German or a green election victory have on Norway and Norwegian politics after 16 years of Angela Merkel's chancellorship?
I think, of course, it would be, the interest would be really great, because or growing in comparison to before, because what happens is that when someone is in power for such a long time, and also there are no problems. I mean, in relations between Germany and Norway, it's like nothing is ever happening because everything is harmonious, and this is ideal, but it's not ideal if you want interest. It's like everyone think they know the relationship, and they know Angela Merkel, which of course they don't, but this is the, yeah, we've seen her many years. So I think it would generate, if there were a green government, a green led government, or even a green red, or any coalition, I think, with the Greens would would get a lot of attention, because it's like a new force. They have been there for a long time, and they've also been in government before, but from Norwegian perspective, we have our own environmental party, which is very small. They are actually in the city government of Oslo, but they are very small and also a bit different from the Green, but they are the new force here. And I think the interest in seeing how this works out in Germany would be something. In realpolitik, or in the real terms, I don't think very much would change, at least not immediately, because that's the role of Germany. It's stable and it's predictable, and it's not like a green. They are a party in the center of the spectrum. They would not do anything dramatic at once. They would change maybe course, and especially in energy politics. This would of course be very interesting to us, because we still want to sell gas to Germany, and we don't care if other tells us that it's not environmentally friendly to keep on doing what we do. We still want to sell the gas, and maybe also sell hydrogen. So this is maybe the field. The consequences could be great, but it also depends on who will be in the Norwegian government. And I think there is a certain natural development. This is international trends, and even if Germany accelerate their energy politics and go faster into renewables, we all know the direction now. So it won't be huge surprises, but it might go faster than Norwegian gas companies would like.
On a related note, would you expect that a green participation in a potential future German federal government would have any kind of effect on Germany's foreign and security presence in a relationship with Norway and the wider region?
Yes, I think that might be the most interesting part, because I think this depends a lot on how powerful the Greens are within a new German government. If they are the biggest party, the shift could be quite big, I think, in relations to Russia. And Russia is our neighbor, and it's so important to us. If they are only like the junior partner, I think there will still be changes, because it's so important for the Greens. It's like one of their, in addition to environment, the relations to authoritarianism are sort of maybe number 2 or number 3 on their list of priorities. So I think there's no way there will be a government in Germany with green participation that will continue what has been until now. There will be a shift, and with in the Russia politics, very, very important to us, of course. And I'm very excited to see this exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to see if daytime murder attempts in Tiergarten will become less of a shocking tendency going forward, and other similar nasty, suspicious, potentially Russian related activities. But now you spoke a bit earlier about we spoke a bit earlier about the general level of knowledge and interest for Germany, but also Europe and in Norway. What would, in your view, need to be done to increase and improve public engagement, participation, excitement, interest for instance, continental European politics in Norway?
If I only knew. I don't know, but of course I'm, as a journalist, I believe in just keep going. I mean, we are a lot of journalists who are very interested in Germany, who speaks German and who work in different media, and who try to do our best and to tell what is happening. And this we can do, and as I said before, I think we are now maybe getting some help from like international political trends. That the interest in UK, I think it must be dwindling now. I mean, why should we be so interested? We have spent so many newspaper pages and so many journalistic positions in covering UK. This won't happen anymore, and the resources will be guided elsewhere. So I think that might help in the long run. Of course, there is the language issue, and there's nothing much to do about that. It is what it is. But what and maybe also something is changing, because this is old news, but Berlin is still maybe the hottest city in Europe, and now we have not been traveling at all for a long time, but I also think that because so many Norwegians keep traveling in Germany, of course it has to have consequences in political interest. I hope, I believe.
Yeah, well, I think with our discussions ongoing in Western Sweden about improved rail connection between Oslo and Gothenburg. So who knows? Maybe nighttime train rides down to
that would be brilliant.
Germany will hopefully be possible in 5 years or 10 years.
Yeah.
if the people in Gothenburg get what they want, which doesn't unfortunately always happen. But now being a recipient of a Norwegian Willy-Brandt Prize, and also rounding out of our discussion, somebody with experience of both Germany and Norway and view of each country and other country. What would you say Germany could learn from Norway, and what could Norway learn from Germany? If you could freely just copy and paste something to improve the betterment of everybody, what would those things be?
Well, I think Germany are already quite interested in our family politics and in the rights of women. So we are some steps ahead there, but also Germany are now improving every year. But I think they have looked to the Nordic countries and also to Norway to do that. But I also think that Germany could learn from us about digitalization and simplifying the tax system. It's like I just did my tax returns, and in Norway it's now come to this: you just receive you receive it, the paper digitally, and you go in, you log yourself in, you look at it and you say it's okay. It takes 5 minutes. And in Germany, I think you still have to have professional help to fill out these incredibly difficult papers. At least I mean, it's some years since I did it in Germany, but I had to hire someone to do it for me, and that was quite normal. A lot of people did that. So here they have a lot to learn. But it's also worth noticing that Germany, they are actually very interested in learning from other countries. And here I think Norway have something to learn, because we are not as interested in other countries. We like to see ourselves as top of the world. And in a way, I mean, we are like the winners of the international lottery in a lot of ways. We are lucky, really lucky people. But we could maybe learn from Germany to be a little bit more critical of ourselves, a little bit more analytical. And also we could learn a lot about how to debate politics and history. A Danish writer, she wrote a book called Germany is an adult country. Altså, Tyskland et land for voksne. I'm so envious of this title. It's a brilliant title for a book, and it's also very true. Germany is politically mature in a way Norway are absolutely not, and it's a wise country with a lot of interesting debates, with ability to disagree with each other and to argue, that I really admire.
I have a background in Swedish liberal conservative circles, and they're saying that Germany is Sweden for adults is also quite common, but it's usually almost exclusively based on the fact that you can buy beer anywhere you want. You don't have to go to the Systembolag. Or Denmark, where you can freely buy Jack Daniels 7-Eleven or so, freedoms like that. But I understand your wider point. And I also, now looking forward, I heard that you are working on already your next book about Germany.
Yes, it's a book about German politics. I'm trying to make the Norwegians be more interested in German politics, so I'm doing this. It will be like introductory, trying to explain the basics, but at the same time being a little bit entertaining, easy to read. So I'm now following the election year, looking for the best stories. Like Boris Palmer is a very good story. The major that is part of the Greens, and they are trying to throw him out. So this book will be published after there is a new government in place, because it will be looking forward. It will be this is how Germany works, this is how they think and prioritize, and this is the new government, the after Merkel people. This is who they are, and this is where they want to go. So because it could take, I mean, last time it wasn't a new government until Easter, but maybe it can be very fast. So I don't really know, but it will be published then sometimes next year.
Oh, wonderful! I will be signing myself up on the waiting list, and hopefully be able to visit Oslo for the release seminar or something similar. Thank you so much, Ingrid, for your time today and talking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the link to Tyskerne, the podcast, will be linked in all descriptions related to this episode. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.